wonderful to be back here, Mussar Mondays. This is the 40th class in the Mesilat Yesharim series. We are right now at chapter 11, not the reorganizing bankruptcy type, but just the chapter 11 of the Mesilat Yesharim, where we spoke about the past couple of chapters about the qualities of cleanliness. And cleanliness, we're talking about cleanliness of character, cleanliness of staying away from anything that could be considered a remnant of a piece, a dust of sin, whether it be in our speech, in our actions. And we talked about just keeping ourselves clean. Part of the greatness of being a growing Torah Jew is that we're always in a upward incline, trying to take a step in our growth. Always trying to take a step. At the end of this past week's parsha, we ended off just after the Jewish people received the Torah. It talks about that the Kohen should not walk upstairs, so as not to reveal his private parts to the floor, so to speak, of the temple. What's the problem with having stairs? And our sages tell us that that's not the way the Jewish people grow. The Jewish people don't grow by stairs. We grow by a ramp. That's why to the altar there was a ramp and not a staircase. Because when you have stairs is a pre-engineered design for growth, for taking a step. Every step is 6.5 inches or so, whatever the engineer. Everyone is exactly the same. So if you're a senior citizen, or if of 120 years old, or a little child who's 120 days old and just learned how to walk, right? Both of them have to take the same size step when it's a staircase. But that's not the way it is in spirituality. In spirituality, the way we grow is we take our own size step. Everyone takes their own step, and that's why it's a ramp, particularly a ramp that they needed to use in the temple to tell you, take your own size step. Take a step that's right for you. There's no pre-engineered spiritual growth. And when we talk here, what the Ramchal is telling us, he's telling us a step-by-step process that's part of our growth. But the way in which we do it needs to be our own independent, knowing our own strengths and weaknesses, knowing our capabilities and limitations. We need to know ourselves and know what we are capable of, not jumping or taking too big a step. So we're going to begin by the beginning of chapter Yud Aleph, which is 11, page 171, in the magnificent art scroll translation of the Way of the Upright, otherwise known as Path of the Just. Okay. Bifratei midat nikiyut, details of the trait of nikiyut, which is cleanliness. In this lengthy chapter, Ramchal divides his discussion of nikiyut into three main parts. First, he clarifies nikiyut as it pertains to sins that result from temptation. Then he focuses on nikiyut regarding sins that stem from human interaction. And finally discusses nikiyut with respect to negative midot, negative traits, character traits. Ramchal, again, so it starts off with temptation, human interaction, and negative traits. Ramchal devotes his discussion to those temptations, faulty interactions, and negative character traits that are the greatest challenge to most people. At the end of the chapter, he notes that whatever he wrote is intended as a guide to attaining nikiyut, of this trait of cleanliness, in all one's actions, character traits, including those he has not discussed. Okay, he's not going to discuss every single trait that there is, and therefore it applies to all of them, even those he does not mention. Okay, so the first section of this chapter deals with three categories of sins that result from temptation: theft, illicit relations, and forbidden foods. Pratei midat nikiyut rabim hem meod. The details of the trait of nikiyut are exceedingly numerous. V'hinei kechol hapratim shebechol hashasa mitzvot lo ta'aseh. In fact, they are as numerous as the details of all the 613 prohibitions in the Torah. Ki amnam inyan hamida kfar amarti shehu liyot naki mikol anfei ahavirot. For indeed, the essence of the trait of nikiyut, as I have already stated, is for a person to be purged of all the extensive branches of the various sins, not only those that seem to be more primary and obvious, but this trait encompasses full adherence to every detail and nuance of each of the Torah's prohibitions. Okay, so the Torah has many, many different prohibitions that are listed, and this trait of nikiyut is relevant to every single one of them. And you can apply this trait of nikiyut, of cleanliness, to every single prohibition of the Torah. How do you keep yourself clean? Okay? V'ulam. However, even though the evil inclination strives to cause a person to transgress in all sins, there are certain sins that human nature covets more intensely. And regarding them, it will show, the Yetzer Hara will show him more rationalizations, right? Because you're already halfway there with your own temptations and desires. So now he just says, you know what, it's not such a big deal. You know, everyone does it. It's just vacation. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? It's not a big deal. You know, it's like, this is everyone. It's not, right? Asher al kain yitztarech behen yoter. For this reason, one will need greater reinforcement in those areas to prevail over his evil inclination and to be purged of sin. So what will happen is that because a person already, again, has two things going against him. Number one, he has his own inclination. A person, let's assume, he said the first thing is going to be theft, right? So any type of theft, a person has their own desire. They want to have money, they want to have fame, they want to have luxury, comfort, whatever it is that a person desires. So the person has his own will for it. Then the Yetzer Hara adds a dose to it, where he says, you know what? But everyone does this. Everyone cheats a little on their taxes. It's just a rounding error. It's not such a big deal. I just look at Congress, right? If you want to see how bad accounting really works, right? Right, just look at how they manage a budget in Congress. It's amazing. By the way, you know what a budget in Congress is that doesn't grow?
That's a cut.
No. Oh, no.
They call it a cut.
They don't know.
The Dems do.
No. They'll call it a cut if they don't get a 10% growth every year on their budget. That's called a budget cut. Mm-hmm. That means if they leave it at $100 billion for the department that nobody knows what anyone does with it, right? And this year they're not going to move it to $110 billion, that's a cut. Because it just stayed at where it was. Right? Mm-hmm. Imagine how we're ever going to pay up debts in this country. But let's not talk about government, because then you need a lot more than just cleanliness and nikiyut, right? So let's just keep it to our own simple little sins and things that are much simpler and smaller. You know, my grandfather had a terrible disdain for politicians, because he said, this is true, he said it about the Knesset. My grandfather said the entire Jewish people, every single Jew, is capable of returning to the Almighty and doing teshuvah, except if you're a member of Knesset. He says then your soul is so tainted and so filthy with all of the corruption, it's impossible. That's what he said. I heard him say it numerous times. I mean, it's really a high level of a really high level of corruption. Okay, but we have over here what the Ramchal is telling us here is that we all have things that we already, from our own instinct, from our own internal desires and temptations, already have an inkling, an intention to want to connect with these things. All right, so he's talking theft particularly. Okay, so it's not that idea that I want to steal, but I want to make money, so I'll do this rounding error, I'll do whatever it is. So What's the Yetzer Hara going to do? He says, you're already weak on your own right. So what am I going to do now? Now I'll just entice you. And I'll add to you, everyone does it. It's such a small amount, no one will even pay attention because there are bigger fish in the sea, right? And that's the way the Yetzer Hara already adds to our already present weakness. See, he says, Al ken yitztarech behem yoter chizuk lenatzeach et yitzro linakot menachet. For this reason, one will need greater reinforcement in those areas to prevail over his evil inclination and to be purged of sin. And thus did the sages of blessed memory say in the tractate Chagiga 11b, Gazel ve'arayot nafsho shel adam mechamdatan u'mitavel lahen. He says theft and illicit relationships are things that a person's character covets and craves without any help of the Yetzer Hara. Now you add the Yetzer Hara to it, it only makes things worse. Therefore, we will concentrate, says the Ramchal, on nikiyut, particularly regarding such sins. Okay, so let's see. So Ramchal begins a lengthy discussion regarding nikiyut from theft. All right, what does it mean to have nikiyut from theft? So he says as follows: Hine anachnu ro'im she'af al pi shelo rov bnei adam ganavim begaluhem. Now we see that even though most people are not outright thieves, I don't know anyone who's an outright thief. Okay, maybe Bernie Madoff, but I don't really know him, right? Right? But how many people do we even know are dehainu sheyishluchu yad mamash b'mamon chavreim lakachat v'lasum b'chileihem? He says that is, they are not of the type who will actually extend their hand towards their fellow's property to take it and put it into their own pockets, right? How many people do we know who are ready to walk over to Eric and just rip his nice Rolex off his hand? I don't know if he has a Rolex, but here you go. Ed is volunteering. But so what happens, you don't see people that we know at least, that are just willing to rip the clothes off someone's back. You have a nice jacket, I'll take that for myself. We don't really know people like that. So what type of theft are we aware of? Afal pikein rubam to'im tam gneva. Nevertheless, most of them get a taste of theft in the course of their business dealings. Right? In that they rationalize for themselves permission for one man to profit from their fellow's loss. My father was in business many, many years ago. He had his own company, and he hired a young guy's first job out of school. He hired the guy, and he was my father. After his first week of this young man working for my father, so my father said to him, they were doing just a basic review of what happened that week, and my father says, "One second, what did you just tell me?" And he was pure theft, like pure theft. My father said, "What is this?" He says, "What do you mean? It's business." It's business. He says, in business, you can do whatever you want. It all falls under the category of business. Well, not in my business. You can leave now, okay? That's theft. That's theft. I'll tell you to what degree you need to be careful. My father, who was a man of absolute honesty and truth, he once worked for a company, and on his last day of the job, it was a Friday afternoon, he walks into the boss's office, and he says, "I need to ask you forgiveness." He says, "Okay, so tell me, how much money did you steal?" He says, "No, I didn't steal a penny." So I was always honest for every single. He says, "But I may have used a pencil from the office for my private purpose. I may have had a pen that went into my bag and didn't come back to the office, right? That may have, my kids may have taken out of my bag. I may have used the fax machine for personal use." He says, "Oh, that's not a problem, right? That's not a problem, right?" But that's how careful one needs to be. Hey, rounding error, big deal. I work for the company, so I could take paper, I could take pens, I can take whatever I want, right? Who cares? By the way, it's a very big problem that's happening in offices today, in companies, where companies are hiring special technology firms to block out social media, to block out Amazon, because people are paid by the hour. and while the boss is not in the room, they're busy chatting with their friends online, posting things on Instagram and Facebook. You're on company time. That is called theft. But what do people say? Everyone's doing it. If everyone's doing it, it must be okay. And that's what the Ramchal is telling us here. It's because everyone is Mora Heter. Everyone says it's okay. And therefore, it has to be okay. Because, that's just the way life is. Says the Ramchal, we need to be so careful by these things that we say it's okay. He says they rationalize for themselves permission for one man to profit from his fellow's loss. So you profit, you're doing your own little business on the side, you're doing your own little thing here and your own little thing there, right? You're benefiting from what? From your boss paying you an hourly wage when you're not even working for him. V'yomru laharviach shani. And they claim making a profit is different. What do you mean I'm making a profit? That's not stealing. Rounding errors. Send me the invoice, and you just round it off a few numbers, to the nearest 10, right? Instead of it being 599, you say it's 10, right? It's just a rounding error. And if they come back to you, you'll say, oversight by the accounting department, right? He says business is business. In business, one does not have to follow the same code of ethics that one has to follow in personal life, and that's the justification people make for themselves. V'ulam lavim harbe nemru begezel. He says there are many, many prohibitions in the Torah that have been stated in the Torah with regard to theft, including lo ta'ashok, that one should not cheat your fellow. Lo sigzol, one should not rob. Lo signevu, and that one should not steal. Lo sechachashu, one should not deny falsely. Lo seshakru ish ba'miso, one should not lie to another. Lo sonu ish esachiv, and do not aggrieve one another. Lo sasig vul re'echon, you shall not move the boundary of your fellow. These are just a few of the little, you move your fence over a foot into your neighbor's yard. You know what you just did? Theft. You just stole a foot of property. Times, I don't know how many linear feet you're talking about, right? You just stole from your neighbor. What is that? He doesn't use his backyard anyway. It gives my kids an extra. Guess what? That's theft. All of these different prohibitions in the Torah of prohibitive sins that the Torah says you're not allowed to do. Hein kol ela chaluki dinim shebegezel. Now all of these are subcategories of theft. Right? One is referring to not cheating in words. One is not cheating during the day, and we're not cheating at night. Not being dishonest to someone when they don't know. What's if they'll never find out? They'll never find out. Right? Are you allowed to do that? Just because someone's not allowed to find out, does that mean that you're allowed to be dishonest?
Nope.
Right?
God knows.
Right? Exactly. Kol olam ma'asim rabim min ha'ma'asim hana'asim b'chlal ha'ma'asav ha'matan ha'medini. Encompass many. It says now all of these subcategories of theft encompass many of the things that are done in the course of standard business dealings. Uvechulam asurim isurim rabim. And in each of these subcategories, there are included many forbidden things. On top of 174. We see that there are many, many, many forbidden things. Ki lo ha'ma'aseh nikarv u'mefursam la'oshek u'begezel hu levado ha'asur. For it is not only the blatant and obvious act of cheating or theft that is forbidden. Ella kol shesof sof yagia elav yigromoto kvar hu bichlal ha'isur. But anything that can ultimately lead to it or cause it it is in truth also included in the prohibitions. Anything that will lead to at one point taking advantage of someone else is also part of theft. right? So it really is. It's an incredible thing. You know that they have a company. I'm not familiar with the name of the company, but the company basically what they do is they will go into a corporation, and they will go through all of your bills and find mistakes that the billing company made. Imagine you have a water bill and they bill you double or triple what your water consumption was. And they're saving these companies millions and millions of dollars by just wrongful billing. That's called theft. It's unbelievable. Wrong, right? That's theft like any other theft. But it's not putting a gun to someone's head saying, "Give me your watch." But it's the same theft. It's the same theft. And Ramchal is telling us, he's warning us that we have that's without the Yetzer Hara's help. Right? That's without the Yetzer Hara even getting involved too much. But then you have the next step, which is the Yetzer Hara getting involved. And we'll see. Ramchal cites a supporting statement of the sages. In reference to this matter, the sages of blessed memory stated, he did not defile his fellow's wife. To what does this refer? It means that he did not encroach upon his friend's trade. Right? So let's look at the commentary here. So commentary number 6. You see that? The prophet Yechezkel describes a righteous man as one who did not defile his fellow's wife. The sages explain that this description has a broader application. It means that he did not encroach on his fellow's livelihood, which is sometimes likened in scripture to one's wife. The sages thus construe defiling his fellow's wife as a general statement that includes many lesser manifestations of taking what belongs to his fellow. Encroaching on someone's trade refers to opening a competing business in cases where the halacha forbids, or at least frowns on, the practice. One who does so has not technically stolen anything, he has simply prevented his fellow from earning as much money as he otherwise would have. Nevertheless, he does not qualify as a righteous man. So what we call today antitrust, right? These are things that are very serious. You know, it's amazing. We see a story that I think I've mentioned a couple of times before of the Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim was so careful that he was a shopkeeper. Who wouldn't want to buy the Chavetz Chaim? If you had an option to buy in Randall's or to buy at the Chavetz Chaim store, where would you go? To go to the Chavetz Chaim. You wanted to see the holy sage. You'd be able to, while you shop for your kugel and your cholent, right? You can also see the Chavetz Chaim and get a blessing, right? You take your children to that store. You want your children to be influenced by a righteous, right? Guess what? The Chavetz Chaim store was open till he made enough money for Shabbat. As soon as he made enough money for Shabbat, he'd close the store and say, "Go shop by my competitor." Right? Most people are not so righteous. And most people are not so, right? But imagine if the Chavetz Chaim didn't do that. If he wasn't the pristinely honest person that he was. Do you know how easy it is for one to steal as a shopkeeper? Anybody here ever weigh your chicken that you buy? You buy it in a pack, right? Do you weigh, see if it's accurate? They can just put on a half a pound on everything, and that's a real racket right there. You understand what could happen? We buy thousands of pounds of meat in this city, right? All it has to be is a half a pound off, a quarter of a pound off. No one will notice. Right? It's a serious thing. Someone who's having a challenge with their livelihood, right, and then wants to make more profit, right? They'll say that it's $3.99 a pound instead of the competitor's $5.99 a pound, but then he adds an extra half a pound to it. Understand? So these are real challenges that need to. I'll give you another example. Someone says that they want to buy a certain product, so you sell them the product, but really you're selling them the cheaper product. They'll never know the difference. I'm selling you the made in China one, right? I'm not selling you the one made in America, right? The one which will be a higher quality. And it's okay, it's a big deal. It's not trading partners anyway. It's a serious thing. Just today you have this with Amazon. You can write a description in the item that you're selling that's not accurate. Right? What's the likelihood that they'll return it? What's the likelihood that they'll figure it out that I wasn't honest, that I just put it in there along with the just like it really is a very, very big challenge. Rabbi Chal cites a supporting statement, and he says, like we just said, that one who does not defile his fellow's wife, and that's referring to his fellow's trade, right? The degree to which one must avoid encroaching on his fellow's trade, top of page 175. In fact, the Tana, the great Talmudic sage Rabbi Yehuda, would caution a storekeeper not to distribute toasted grain and nuts to children or candies in order to accustom them to frequent his store, as he felt that this would confer with an unfair advantage to the storekeeper over his competitors. And even the sages who disagree with Rabbi Yehuda permit it only because his fellow storekeeper is also able to do this. So the practice does not confer an unfair advantage on any one of them. It means it has to be an equal playing field when you have competition. The severity of stealing from one's fellow man, by the way, today think of it of technology, of intellectual property, right? Someone can today, and this happens, they say that maybe even trillions of dollars worth of technology is being stolen every year by China, where you send them your prototype Apple tablet, Apple iPad, and 20 minutes later there's a new Toyota, not Toyota, but Chinese knockoff iPad with the exact same technology. It's unbelievable, right? It's a very, very big problem. Very similar to what we're talking about here. He says, he says the severity of stealing from one's fellow man. The sages of blessed memory also stated, theft from a common man is a more severe sin than theft from the Most High, from the temple treasury, as evidence from the fact that this case of theft from a common man, the verse mentions the thief's sin before his treachery, whereas in the case of the theft from the temple treasury, it mentions his treachery before the sin. Okay, meaning over here by one of them it says when it talks about personal property theft, it says nefesh ki sechata, talks about the sin, v'mala mal b'Hashem, and then it says he committed treachery against Hashem by lying to his comrade. Right. So first it says the sin, and then it talks about the treachery. Right over here, it says when it talks about the theft from the treasury of the temple, it first talks about the treachery and then it talks about the sin, right? Because the sin to a fellow man is worse than the sin that one performs to the Almighty. The top of 176, Ramchal gives an example of so-called standard practices that the sages regard as theft. In fact, the sages exempted those who work from an employer, for an employer, they they exempted employees who work for their employer an hourly wage. They exempted them from the reciting the blessing of Hamotzi before eating their meal, and from the blessing that they say after eating food, Birkat HaMazon. Because of the extra time spent reciting the blessings would constitute stealing time paid by the employer. See how careful the Talmud is? See how careful our sages are? That even that little time that you're, well, how long is it going to take to say a blessing? It'll take you 3 minutes. That's theft. Va'afilu b'kriyah Shema, and even regard the recitation of Shema, through which a person accepts upon himself the yoke of Hashem's sovereignty. Lo chiyuvum libatel mimlachton ela beparsha rishona bavad. The sages are obligated workers to stop working in order to concentrate fully only during the recitation of the first passage. The rest of Shema, however, they recite, right? They recite while working. They're not allowed to stop. Okay? Kal v'chomer, ben bno shel kal v'chomer, l'divrei reshus. If this is how scrupulous a person must be with his employer's time, even when it comes to mitzvah matters, how much even more so is it true with regard to optional matters? When it's not a matter of godliness, just your own Amazon click time, when it's your own Facebook or Instagram or one of those other things. Shekol schir yom asur behen asur behen shelo levato malachto shel baal habayis. That anyone hired by the day is forbidden to engage in them so as not to neglect the work of their employer, who is paying them for that time. V'im avar hareze gazlon, and if he transgressed and engaged in personal matters during that work time, he is a thief. Right? You don't have to have a ski mask and a machine gun and a machete, right, to be a thief and walk into a 7-Eleven store. Right? That's not, no, it's much easier. Right? You can be sitting at your desk working for your employer at an hourly wage and spend private time doing your own thing, and that is theft 100%. And this is what Ramchal is warning us about. Ramchal is warning us about the small minutia, the small things that we're like, what's the big deal? It's not, it's just a little, you know. Additional illustrations of the standard of integrity that constitutes nikiyut, cleanliness of the employee. Hine Abba Chilkiya afilu shalom lo heishi letalmidei chachamim shenasnu lo shalom. Consider the story of the Amora, the second generation Talmudic sage Abba Chilkiya, who while working for an employer would not even respond properly to the Torah scholars who greeted him, shelo levatel mimeleches re'eyu, so as not to neglect the work of his fellow who was paying him for that time. He was working for his master. His master pays him for every minute. The rabbis are passing by and they see Abba Chilkiya working. They say, "Hey, Abba Chilkiya, how are you? How's your day?" He wouldn't even respond. You know why? Because responding would take his time out of his work, and his employer would lose his valuable, precious time and money, right? Because Abba Chilkiya is busy responding, right? V'Yaakov Avinu alav hashalom mivara b'fiv v'omer, and our forefather Jacob, peace be unto him, articulates this exalted level of integrity with his own mouth and says regarding his work for his father-in-law, Laban, Hoyisi bayom acholani chorev v'kerach balayla v'tidor shnasi me'enai. He says, this is how I was. By day, scorching heat consumed me, and frost by night. My sleep drifted from my eyes. Ma yanu efo ha'oskim b'hanoseim b'sha'as melacha uvetele mimeno. What then will be the answer of those who are busy with their own pleasures during the time of work, when they neglected as a result? Oh, Ki yasku becheftseihem ish levitzo. Or if they attend their own business during work hours, each man seeking his own dishonest gain, rather than the benefit of the employer who is paying them. So it's a remarkable thing that the Ramchal is telling us here. It's telling us how simple it is to fall into the trap of theft. And theft, by the way, is not something that we're considering to be just, right? Again, it's not walking into the bank and holding them up at gunpoint. It's not, cracking into someone's online banking account and transferring out money. That's not what it's talking about. It's very simple things. Now imagine for a second that a person was so careful with their time when they work for someone else. Right? If that's called nikyut, cleanliness, being so clean and so pristine in every single moment of their focus, so as not to steal from their employer. You think such a person would steal from a bank? You think someone like this would steal from their taxes? You think someone like this would do a rounding error? No, because they're so careful. And that's what Ramchal is teaching us here. Ramchal is bringing it to our attention that if in such areas a person will be negligent, there's for certain that there are other areas they'll be negligent in. All right? And here Ramchal continues. The overriding principle that emerges from the above, klalo shel davar, the sum of the matter is, hasachur etzel chaver le'ezeh malacha shetiyeh, if one is in the paid employ of his fellow for any work whatsoever, hine kol she'osav mechuros hein lo liyomo, all of his hours are thereby sold for that time to his employer. Like the concept that our sages of blessed memory said, they've expressed about the rental of utensils. Schirus michir liyomei. Rental is tantamount to a sale for the day of the rental. V'kol ma sheyikach mehem lanos atzmo be'ezeh ofen sheyeh. Thus, whatever portion of the time he takes for his own benefit in any manner whatsoever, Eino ele gezel gomer, is nothing but sheer theft. V'im lo mechalo eino machol. And if the employer did not forgive it, then it is not forgiven by Hashem either, even if the thief repents before him. So if you steal from someone, even if it's 5 minutes of their time that they paid you for, you say, okay, Hashem, please forgive me. Right? Hashem can't forgive you because the person who you stole from didn't forgive you. Okay? He says this is sheer theft. And if the employer doesn't forgive me, he's not forgiven by Hashem, even if the thief repents before him. Because our sages said of blessed memory, unequivocally, Averos, sins that are between Ben Adam Lechavero, between man and his fellow, Ein Yom Kippurim Mechaper Ad Shiratze Es Chavero. Even Yom Kippur does not atone until he appeases his fellow. So yeah, a person can think, you know what, it's not a big deal, right? But till you don't attain full forgiveness from the person you stole from, even Yom Kippur does not atone for it. Yes?
What if the person refuses to forgive you?
You pay them back.
How?
Give them back the money you stole from them.
What if it was an action?
Okay, one second. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen.
I apologize. If it's an action, right? So a person. So it's not in the topic that we're talking about now, but in the Curated Teshuvah, which is a book that looks identical to this, someone might have it next to them, and it's not the Mesilat Yesharim. The Curated Teshuvah actually Oh, okay. So I'm sorry. You're probably trying to figure out why we're not reading the same thing as you. Right. I'm sorry. So yeah, they look exactly the same, but it's not the same. I'm sorry. So the Shari Tshuva over there goes into the exact details of what one needs to do if they indeed are not the recipients of forgiveness of the person they. And it's not a simple thing. It's not a simple thing, but the basic process is they have to go back 3 times and ask forgiveness, and in front of other people they have to ask. It's not a simple thing to just attain forgiveness, but it's there. It's there.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Further insight into the gravity of theft. By the way, I will tell you that it's not only today. I'll tell you a very, very funny story. When we were building out this center, so we had a crew here. I had the contractor, and he brought his workers, and it was very funny because we were ready to put in the bathroom, the toilet, and he wasn't. He asked me. He said, "Are you going to have it on Monday?" So it'll be here on Monday. Okay, it'll be on Monday. Okay, great. On Monday. Okay, great. Monday it's there. He doesn't install it. The following week, I'm like, okay, what happened? You wanted it on Monday, and you're still not installing it. He says, no. I need it to be here, but I can't install it. He says, because then my workers would be in there and they'd be on their phone all the time. So I don't install bathrooms till the last thing before I leave a job is I install the bathrooms. He says it's the last thing I do because otherwise they're on their phones on Facebook. And that's what he told me. It's a funny thing because I remember one time he was here. They were finishing up work with the piping and making sure everything was done properly, and he's up in the ceiling, and the employee is down under the sink. And I was watching this. The employee pulls out his second phone and he's busy scrolling. And his guy's on top screaming, "Hey, can you pull the thing?" He doesn't even hear because he's busy on his phone, right? So, it's a real problem. It's a real problem, right? That people are spending time today. You see, I'm sure all over the place. Wherever you go, you see people on their phone. You come and you're right. You go to the bank. Even the tellers at the bank, they're just sitting there scrolling on their phones. You're waiting online. Let's go. We gotta, that could be theft of your time, by the way. That you have to wait for them. It's a very serious matter, what the Ramchal is bringing to our attention here. See, he says, any type of employment of a day, right, you got to be careful. You have to ask forgiveness. And even Yom Kippur is not going to forgive if you don't have the forgiveness of the person you harmed. Further insight into the gravity of theft of an employer's time. Moreover, even if one did a mitzvah during the time of his neglect of work, he says, just know that the mitzvah is not considered a meritorious deed for him. I see you think, well, it's a mitzvah. He's going to have a problem that I did a mitzvah during work hours? It's not called a mitzvah. It's called theft. All right? Ela averi biyodo, rather it is a transgression in his hand, on his account. She'ein avera mitzvah, for a transgression is not a mitzvah. Ukra ksiv sone gazel be'ola. He says, and the verse is written, for I am Hashem who loves justice and hates an ola offering brought with robbery. So you're going to steal someone's cow, right? And you're going to bring it as an offering. Great. What a fabulous mitzvah. Right? It's like, I'm going to steal so that I can give charity. It's very nice, right? Ramchal says there's no mitzvah there. It's not only, right, but it's a sin. It's a sin. The sages of blessed memory expressed a similar idea. Someone who stole a sa'ah of wheat, and then he took a quantity of wheat, stole a quantity of wheat, grounded it into flour, and kneaded it and baked it, and made a blessing upon separating the challah from it. Ein zo mevorach ela menaitz. This person is not blessing Hashem, but he's blaspheming Hashem. Tiksiv ubotzea berech ni eitz Hashem, as it is written in Psalms. And a robber who makes a blessing has blasphemed Hashem. Ve'al kayotze bazeh. Ne'emar oy lo lazeh shenase sanigora kategoro. And furthermore, about things in such nature, it is said, woe to this one whose defender has become his accuser. And the sages of blessed memory in Tractate Sukkah tell us regarding the one who wishes to fulfill the mitzvah of Sukkot with a stolen lulav. Right? You steal someone else's lulav, and you, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's only one exception that I can think of where you're allowed to use someone else's possessions without their permission. And that is when it comes to tefillin. If a person needs to put on tefillin and all he has is his friend's pair of tefillin, our sages say you're allowed to wear your friend's tefillin because your friend wants you to put on tefillin, right? Because he wants that mitzvah, he wants that merit, right? But that's the only time that I think that you are allowed to steal your fellow's. Right? It doesn't mean you can steal, but you can use it without your fellow's permission. If you walk into synagogue, you want to put on tefillin, you're afraid it's getting dark, it's about to get dark, you're about to miss sunset, you run into shul, you take any pair of tefillin you find, put them on, and you did a mitzvah. Make sure though, and this is what the halacha says, to put it back in the way you found it. Right? But it doesn't mean that it has to, right, that you have to have permission. Why? Because it says, mitzvah b'mono. A person is happy that someone is doing a mitzvah with his possession, with his money. So he says that God doesn't want an offering from robbery, from theft. Anticipating the argument that the sages referred only to a mitzvah object that was stolen, not to a case of a mitzvah performed during stolen time, Ramchal asserts that such reasoning is flawed. Well, you'll tell me using an object, right? That's obvious because it's stolen. It's a stolen object. But time is different because what do you mean, right? He says Vadinosen, and logic dictates that there is no difference between the two cases. Ki harei gezel chayfetz gezel, the gezel zman is gezel. He says stealing an object is theft, and stealing time is theft. Ma gozel es hachefetz ve'ose bo mitzvah nasa sanigora kategoro, just as one who steals an object and performs a mitzvah with it. What should have been the defender becomes the accuser. He says, Af gozel es hazman ve'ose bo mitzvah nasa sanigora kategoro. So too, if one steals time and performs a mitzvah act with that time, what should have been his defender now becomes his accuser. Ve'ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu chafetz ela be'emunah. This is because the Holy One, blessed is He, desires nothing but faithfulness and truth. V'chein hu omer emunim notzer Hashem. And thus does Scripture in Psalms say, Hashem safeguards those who are faithful. V'omer pischu she'orim v'yovo goy tzadik shomer emunim. And it says in Isaiah, open the gates so the righteous nation, keeper of faithfulness, may enter. V'omer einai b'ne'emenei eretz l'sheves imadi. And it says, my eyes are upon the faithful of the land, and they may dwell with me. V'omer, and it says as well, einecha halo le'emunah. And it says, Hashem, your eyes are turned only towards faithfulness. So what we see here is that it's very, very clear that what the Almighty wants from us is honesty. What the Almighty wants from us is truthfulness and faithfulness, and not cheating the system, and not rounding errors, and not stealing people's time, and certainly not doing mitzvahs with objects that are stolen. So I want to leave off with one quick story that I've said before, but I want to repeat it again. There was a young woman who called me up and she wanted to know what the halacha is regarding an object that she bought from one of the local big stores, and you buy it online and you pick it up in store. Then they let you know that you have 3 days to pick it up, and then she comes to the store 3 days later, and on the way to the store she gets an email saying that her order had been canceled due to lack of pickup. She says, you know what, I'm on my way already, I'm just going to go. She goes to the store and she picks up her item, she gives them the barcode, and they scan it, and they give her her item, and she leaves, and by the time she gets home, she sees that they credited her account for the amount of the object that they just canceled, that she had just picked up. Right? So now what? Does she have to return the object?
Or pay for it.
She asked me what to do, and I verified. What's that?
No, she'd have to pay for it.
Well, it's their mistake. Essentially, you can argue, like the devil's advocate can say it's their mistake. What do you mean? You gave me the object. It's not theft. It's not. It's their mistake. It's clearly their mistake.
But still, you have to let them know.
She
Okay.
got it later, after 3 days.
She got it on the third day after they had sent the email that they canceled the item. She went, they gave it to her, and then they gave her the credit. Okay? So it's their mistake, very clearly. It's their mistake. Can she keep it? Does she have to go back, return it? What's the halacha? So the halacha is actually that because it's their mistake, she's halachically allowed to keep it. However, my rabbi made this very, very clear. If she ever wants to enjoy it, she should go and pay for it. Because you never ever benefit by someone's mistake. You never ever, just because halachically by the letter of the law it's their mistake, right? If you go to a store and there's one watch, right, and inside the box you find that there's a second watch, they made a mistake, you don't have to go back and tell them. Right? By law, you don't have to. It's not theft. You didn't steal anything from them. It's their mistake. However, the right thing to do would be to give it back to them. Why? Just as a side thing. You'll never benefit. You'll never enjoy it when theft is involved. When something that's potentially dishonest is involved in the transaction. And you have to remember it always. Right? Yeah, they made a mistake, a billing error, a rounding error. You're never going to really benefit from it, right? I'll tell you why. Just we once had a situation where there was a misbilling that we got from an item, where they credited us for an item that we never returned. My wife came back to the store and she says, I just want to bring it to your attention that we got money back that we didn't deserve. And the person there at the register, the cashier, had no idea what my wife was talking about. Absolutely no idea. And they're like, do you want the item again? What do you want another item? Like, we were not exactly, they couldn't understand what we were saying. So my wife said, do you have a manager? So they called the manager. And the manager couldn't either understand that they had sent it to her. Like, how can they send you money if you didn't return the item? Because they did, right? We don't know why, but they did, right? So we want to correct the wrong. So the lady said to us, the manager, she said to us, you know what? It's just, I think it was $19. She says, just $19, just keep it, and it's a gift from us, and goodbye. But then we asked the question, we asked the halachic authority, right? Are we allowed to keep that? What right does this manager have to forgo the $19 of the owner, of the company? What right do they have to just forego it? It's not theirs. Right? If you have someone working for you and they give the little kids when they come, just to take some free bubble gum, no problem. Eventually you catch on to it, like, what are you doing, right? You're giving away the store, you're giving away the bank. Why would you do that? Unless there's specific permission. So my rabbi explained to me that many times, especially in big corporations, you're not going to call the district manager or whoever it is for every single return, right? So they give a little bit of a leeway for every manager to have, between $10, $20, $30, they can do a friends and family discount, and that's something that they're allowed to do. And it's just an interesting thing. I had the similar question. I have a woman at Starbucks. I'm not going to tell you where and what and where and when. But there's a woman at Starbucks. I don't know. One time I got there, and she started asking me about my family, and my children, and this and that. And we became friends. She asked me my name. I asked her name. It was okay. Every time I go to that Starbucks, I order my coffee, and she just gives me the coffee. Have a great day. And I'm like, well, I didn't pay you. She says, no, friends and family. Right? So I got you. Is she allowed to do that? Is she allowed to do that?
Depends
Right.
on what's in the policies and procedures.
Right. So
Right.
In the policies and procedures of most of these big companies like Starbucks, is that they can give a coffee or two a day. They can give it to a police officer. They can give it to a rabbi. They have that leeway to do it where it wouldn't be theft on my part for accepting it. Right? All right, my dear friends, have a terrific evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Please like and share this video on Facebook, and we look forward to seeing you every day this week. Okay?
What about,
Yes.
there are companies that will send you something you didn't order and send you an invoice for it, and legally, you're not required to pay for that.
That's right.
Right?
Halachically, you're allowed to keep it.
So you
not
can
pay for
inform
it.
them. You can inform them
But
that.
that's their business practice. They hope that, they know that some people pay it and some people return it and some other people won't.
Right.
Is it okay if, you know,
Because they intentionally did that.
they intentionally did that, that's their business.
Actually,
Oh, right. Sometimes they do that. You're right. They send it hoping.
I
Have it
think you're
to
definitely
good to see
entitled
you.
to keep it.
Right.
Without a doubt.